The old grandfather clock in the corner of the main hall chimed 9 times, its deep notes echoing through the nearly empty Eastman School of Music. Almost everyone had gone home for the evening. Professors, students, administrative staff, leaving behind the lingering notes of the day's practice sessions that seemed to hang in the air like invisible mist. Almost everyone, except for May. May Lynn pushed her cleaning cart down the polished hallway, its squeaky wheel creating a rhythm that had become the soundtrack to her evenings over the past 3 years. At 34, she didn't look like someone with any connection to one of the most prestigious music conservatories in the country. At least not the kind of connection people expected. Her worn jeans, faded blue cardigan, and practical shoes marked her as part of the invisible workforce that kept the building running. She liked it that way. Being invisible had its advantages. As she turned the corner toward the East Wing practice rooms, May paused to listen. A violin sang somewhere down the hall. Someone was working late. The haunting melody of Bach's chaconne floated through the air, the notes precise but somehow lacking something essential. Technically perfect, emotionally vacant, May knew the piece well. Too well. She continued her work, giving the late-night musician privacy. Room by room, she emptied small trash bins, wiped down surfaces, and vacuumed the specialized acoustic carpeting. Each practice room had its own personality, some cluttered with coffee cups and scattered sheet music, others meticulously organized. She treated them all with the same care, never disturbing anything that looked important. The violin had stopped. May checked her watch, 9:30 p.m. She had about an hour before her supervisor would make his final rounds. More than enough time. When she reached practice room 17, her favorite, she glanced both ways down the empty hallway. The room housed the conservatory's second-best piano, a Steinway Model D concert grand that had been donated by an alumnus. Unlike the main performance hall piano, this one didn't require special permission to access. And at this hour, nobody would know. May quietly closed the door behind her, set her cleaning supplies aside, and approached the piano with the reverence of someone entering a sacred space. Her fingers, strong from years of scrubbing floors but still graceful, hovered over the keys for a moment before she sat on the bench. She didn't need sheet music. The piece had lived in her memory and muscles for 15 years, even though she'd tried to forget it. Slowly she began to play the opening of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3. The notes came tentatively at first, like someone testing thin ice, afraid it might crack beneath their weight. But the ice held. Her confidence grew with each measure, fingers finding their way home. The piece that had once been her downfall now flowed from her hands like water, powerful, unstoppable, alive. As she played, the years fell away. She wasn't a janitor anymore, but the prodigy she had once been. Before everything fell apart, she closed her eyes, lost in the music, unaware that the door had quietly opened behind her. Anton Hargrove stood frozen in the doorway. The world-renowned violinist had been practicing late for his upcoming competition when he'd heard something that stopped him mid-bow, someone playing Rachmaninoff with such skill that it made his heart ache. He'd followed the sound, expecting to find one of his colleagues or perhaps an exceptional graduate student. Not, whatever this was. The woman at the piano was dressed like maintenance staff, her back to him, completely absorbed in the music. Her technique was impeccable, her interpretation unlike anything he'd heard before. Raw, honest, with none of the showmanship that had become so common among today's performers. This was music as it was meant to be played. Anton leaned forward, accidentally bumping the door with his shoulder. The music stopped abruptly. May turned, her eyes wide with alarm. "Don't stop," Anton said, his voice softer than his usual commanding tone. "Please." But May had already stood up, knocking the bench backward in her haste. "I'm sorry," she stammered, her accent slightly noticeable in her nervousness. "I know I'm not supposed to. I was just at the piano." "That was Rachmaninoff's Third," Anton said, stepping into the room. "One of the most technically challenging pieces in the piano repertoire." May nodded slightly, her eyes darting toward her abandoned cleaning cart. "And you were playing it." "Remarkably well." His brow furrowed in confusion. At 38, Anton had spent his entire life in elite music circles. His tailored suit and confident posture screamed privilege, a stark contrast to the woman before him. "Who are you?" "Just the evening cleaner," May replied, moving toward her cart. I'm sorry for using the piano. It won't happen again. Anton's confusion deepened. But you play like a concert pianist. I need to finish my rounds, May said, grabbing her card and heading for the door. Anton stepped aside but continued to study her face. There was something familiar about her, something he couldn't quite place. What's your name? May hesitated. Lynn, she finally said, offering only her last name. I'm Anton Hargrove, he replied, extending his hand automatically as if they were being introduced at a gala. I know who you are. Mr. Hargrove. May didn't take his hand. Everyone here does. Anton's reputation preceded him everywhere he went. Child prodigy turned international star. He'd won his first competition at age 7 and never looked back. His recordings sold out. His concerts were standing room only, and his opinion could make or break careers. He was brilliant, and he knew it. He was also, according to most who worked with him, impossible. You never answered my question, Anton said, letting his hand drop. Where did you learn to play like that? A long time ago, May replied, her voice suddenly distant. In another life. Before Anton could press further, the sound of a door opening somewhere down the hall made May jump. I have to go, she said, pushing her cart into the hallway with surprising speed. Anton watched her disappear around the corner, leaving him alone with the lingering echo of Rachmaninoff and a mystery he couldn't solve. The next morning, the conservatory hummed with activity. Students rushed between classes, professors debated interpretations of obscure compositions, and administrators tried to manage the controlled chaos that was typical of the fall semester. In the faculty lounge, Anton sat with a cup of black coffee, half listening to a conversation between two composition professors. His mind kept returning to the woman from the night before, Lynn, and her extraordinary playing. He'd spent part of the night searching online for any pianist with that name but found nothing that matched her age or appearance. Anton, are you with us? Professor Diane Williams waved her hand in front of his face, breaking his reverie. What? Yes, of course, he replied, straightening in his chair. We were discussing the charity gala next week, Diane continued. The director wants to know if you'll perform. Anton nodded absently. Fine, whatever piece Richard wants. That's unusually accommodating of you, Diane remarked with raised eyebrows. The door to the faculty lounge opened, and a maintenance worker entered with a vacuum cleaner. Not Lynn, but an older man with a weathered face and kind eyes. Excuse me, Anton called out, setting down his cup. Do you know someone named Lynn? She works evenings, cleaning staff. The man looked surprised to be addressed directly by Anton Hargrove, whose interactions with support staff were typically limited to complaints. You mean May Lynn? Sure, she's been here about 3 years now. Quiet type, keeps to herself. Why do you ask? I have some questions for her, Anton replied vaguely. When does she work? Evening, 6 to midnight, Monday through Friday, the man answered. But listen, she's a good worker. If there's a problem, no problem, Anton interrupted. Thank you. As the maintenance worker began vacuuming the far corner of the room, Diane leaned closer to Anton. Since when do you take an interest in the cleaning staff? Anton ignored the question, his mind already formulating a plan. The upcoming charity gala would feature performances by faculty and select students, showcasing the conservatory's talent for wealthy donors. It was the perfect opportunity. For the next few days, Anton made a point of staying late at the conservatory, hoping to encounter May again. But she seemed to be avoiding the wing where he practiced. He caught glimpses of her a few times, always from a distance, always disappearing around corners before he could approach. The mystery only intensified his curiosity. Anton Hargrove was not accustomed to being avoided. People sought him out, not the other way around. By Friday, his patience had worn thin. The gala was the following evening, and he needed to set his plan in motion. After his afternoon masterclass, he headed to the administrative offices on the 3rd floor. I need information on an employee, he told the human resources assistant without preamble. Maylene maintenance staff. The young woman behind the desk blinked in surprise. I'm sorry, Mr. Hargrove, but that's confidential information. I'm not asking for her social security number, Anton replied, his tone making it clear he was not accustomed to being refused. Just her background. Did she study music? Where? I really can't. It's important, Anton insisted, leaning forward slightly. The assistant shook her head firmly. I'm sorry, but I can't help you. Maybe you could ask her directly. Anton left the office, frustration evident in his stride. He was running out of time and options. As he rounded the corner toward the practice rooms, fate finally intervened. There she was, adjusting something in her cleaning cart, her back to him. Ms. Lin, he called out. May froze, then slowly turned to face him. In the daylight, Anton could see her more clearly. Early 30s, with delicate features and eyes that seemed too old for her face, as if they had seen more than their share of life's difficulties. Mr. Hargrove, she acknowledged quietly. Can I help you with something? Yes, actually. Anton approached her, noticing how she subtly shifted her weight, ready to retreat if necessary. I'd like you to play at tomorrow's gala. The look of shock on May's face would have been comical in another context. What? The charity gala tomorrow evening? I want you to perform. May shook her head vigorously. No, absolutely not. Why not? You play beautifully. I don't play anymore, she said firmly. What you heard was a mistake. A moment of weakness. A moment of brilliance, Anton corrected. Talent like yours shouldn't be hidden away, especially not behind a cleaning cart. May's expression hardened. You know nothing about me or why I do what I do. Then tell me, Anton challenged. Because from where I stand, it makes no sense. Someone with your abilities should be on stage, not mopping floors. Not everyone wants to be on stage, Mr. Hargrove. May's voice was quiet but intense. Not everyone wants to be seen. Anton studied her for a moment. You're afraid. I'm late for work, May replied, turning back to her cart. Rachmaninoff's third, Anton said quickly. Play it tomorrow night. May laughed, a short, bitter sound. You're living in a fantasy world. $1,000, Anton said. For a 10-minute performance. May stopped, her hand gripping the cart handle tightly. Anton could almost see the calculations running through her mind. Why? She finally asked, turning to face him again. Why does it matter to you? It was a good question. One Anton wasn't entirely sure he could answer. Was it curiosity? Professional interest? Or something more personal? A need to understand why someone would walk away from a gift he had sacrificed everything to develop. Because music like that deserves to be heard, he said simply. May looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to detect a hidden agenda behind his words. Finally, she shook her head again. Find someone else for your show. Mr. Hargrove, I'm not a performer anymore. As she walked away, pushing her cart down the hallway, Anton called after her. The offer stands. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Think about it. May didn't look back, but something in the set of her shoulders told Anton she had heard him. And despite her refusal, he had a feeling, a hope, that this wasn't the end of their story. It was just the beginning. The grand ballroom of the Eastman School of Music had been transformed for the evening's charity gala. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over round tables draped in white linen. Flower arrangements in deep blues and purples decorated the center of each table, and a small stage had been set up at the front of the room, featuring the conservatory's prized Steinway concert grand piano. May stood in the shadows of a service corridor, peeking through a crack in the door. She wore her usual work uniform, the standard-issue navy pants and light blue button-down shirt with maintenance embroidered above the pocket. She wasn't supposed to be here tonight. She'd switched shifts with a coworker, claiming a doctor's appointment. Instead, she'd spent the day pacing her tiny apartment, arguing with herself. She shouldn't have come. She knew that. And yet here she was, the ballroom filled with people in expensive evening wear, donors, faculty, and select students chosen to impress the wealthy patrons who kept the conservatory's special programs funded. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. The din of conversation grew louder as more guests arrived. May spotted Anton near the stage, immaculate in a black tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled. He smiled and shook hands with several older couples, the picture of charm and confidence. It was hard to believe this was the same man who had challenged her so directly the day before. $1,000. The number kept echoing in her mind. $1,000 would cover next month's rent and help pay down her mother's medical bills, all for 10 minutes of playing. Something she'd done for free just days ago when she thought no one was listening. But it wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about stepping back into a world she had fled 15 years ago, a world that had nearly destroyed her. The lights dimmed slightly, and director Richard Okafor stepped onto the stage. Tall and distinguished with salt and pepper hair, he tapped the microphone gently. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our annual Autumn Benefactors Gala. We are delighted to have you here tonight to celebrate the extraordinary talent that makes Eastman one of the premier music conservatories in the world." Polite applause followed as director Okafor continued with his welcoming remarks, thanking donors and introducing key faculty members. May watched as Anton checked his watch impatiently. She knew his reputation, brilliance matched only by arrogance. He was not a man accustomed to waiting. "And now," director Okafor continued, "I am pleased to introduce our first performer of the evening, our very own violin virtuoso, Professor Anton Hargrove, who will play Paganini's Caprice No. 24. More applause as Anton stepped onto the stage, violin and bow in hand. He nodded to the audience, then positioned his violin under his chin. A hush fell over the room. The piece began with a deceptively simple theme, but quickly escalated into a whirlwind of technical challenges that only the most skilled violinists could attempt. Anton played with precision and fire, his fingers flying across the strings, his bow a blur of controlled motion. His face remained composed, almost detached, as if the extraordinary feat he was performing required no effort at all. Despite herself, May was transfixed. Anton's playing was technically flawless, perhaps the most perfect execution of the Paganini Caprice she had ever heard. Yet something was missing, some essential humanity beneath the perfection. It was like watching a magnificent machine, awe-inspiring but ultimately cold. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Anton bowed deeply, accepting the adulation as his due. As the applause continued, he raised his hands for silence. "Thank you," he said into the microphone. "Tonight is about celebrating all the talent within these walls. Not just the students and faculty who perform on our stages, but perhaps also those we might overlook." Director Okafor looked confused, clearly not expecting Anton to speak. This wasn't part of the program. "Music is a gift," Anton continued, "and true talent deserves recognition regardless of where it's found. I've recently had the privilege of hearing an extraordinary pianist here at Eastman, someone who plays with more heart and authenticity than many professionals I've encountered." May's stomach dropped. He wouldn't dare. This individual works here not as a teacher or student, but as part of our maintenance staff. A murmur of surprise rippled through the audience. Director Okafor stepped forward, touching Anton's elbow lightly, but Anton continued. "I've invited her to perform for you tonight. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, one of the most challenging pieces in the piano repertoire." The murmurs grew louder. May felt panic rising in her chest. This wasn't an invitation. It was a public challenge, a spectacle. He had never expected her to accept privately. This had been his plan all along. "Ms. May Lin," Anton called out, scanning the room. "Are you here tonight?" All eyes followed his gaze, heads turning, searching for the unknown maintenance worker. May shrank back from the door, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure people could hear it. "Perhaps she's shy," Anton said with a small smile. "Or perhaps she's busy keeping our facilities in order while we enjoy ourselves this evening." There was uncomfortable laughter from some guests, confusion from others. Director Okafor stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you, Anton, for that unexpected introduction. We'll now move on to our next scheduled performer." "Wait." The word came from the back of the room near the service entrance. May had stepped through the door, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. She felt the weight of their stares, curious, skeptical, amused. She recognized several faces from her evening rounds, professors who barely acknowledged her presence as she emptied their trash bins, students who left practice rooms in disarray without a second thought for who would clean them. "There she is," Anton said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "The hidden talent of Eastman." May walked slowly toward the stage, her practical work shoes squeaking slightly against the polished floor. The contrast between her uniform and the formal attire of everyone else couldn't have been more stark. Professor Diane Williams stood up from her table near the front. "Richard, what is this about?" she whispered loudly to the director. "I have no idea," he replied, looking increasingly uncomfortable. May reached the edge of the stage, looking up at Anton. His expression was triumphant, challenging. He extended his hand to help her up the steps, but she ignored it, climbing onto the stage unassisted. Ms. Lin has agreed to play for us tonight, Anton announced, though this was news to May. I think you'll find it illuminating. He gestured toward the piano with a flourish. May stood frozen for a moment, looking at the instrument she had once loved more than anything in the world. The same model she had played at her final competition before everything fell apart. I haven't agreed to anything, she said quietly. But the microphone picked up her words. Anton leaned in, his voice low enough that only she could hear. $1,000. 10 minutes. Or you can walk away and go back to your mops and buckets. May looked out at the sea of faces. Most seemed uncomfortable, embarrassed even, as if witnessing something inappropriate. A few looked angry on her behalf. But some, the musicians, the true artists in the room, showed curiosity. Why are you doing this? She whispered back. To prove a point, Anton replied. Art doesn't belong only to people like us. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. It sounded noble, but May wasn't fooled. This was about Anton's ego, his desire to discover talent, to control the narrative, to be the one who found the diamond in the rough. Director Okafor approached them. Anton, this is highly irregular. Ms. Lin is not on our program. I'll play, May said suddenly, surprising herself as much as everyone else. The director blinked. You'll play? Rachmaninoff's third? Yes. May turned to face the audience. If that's all right. Director Okafor hesitated, then nodded slowly. Of course. If you wish. May sat down at the piano bench, adjusting it slightly. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling their cool smoothness beneath her fingertips. It had been 15 years since she had played for an audience. 15 years of silence and shadows. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to play. The opening of Rachmaninoff's third piano concerto is deceptively simple. A quiet, almost hesitant melody that gives no hint of the technical storm to come. May played those first notes with a tenderness that immediately silenced any remaining whispers in the room. As the piece progressed, her hands began to move more quickly, spanning impossible distances across the keyboard. The music built in intensity, growing from that gentle beginning into cascades of notes that filled the ballroom. Without an orchestra behind her, May somehow suggested the missing instruments through her playing, making the piano sing in multiple voices. The audience sat transfixed. Anton, who had stepped to the side of the stage, watched with growing amazement. This was not the same playing he had heard in the practice room. This was something else entirely. Music stripped bare of pretense, laid open like a beating heart. May was no longer in the ballroom. She was no longer aware of the audience, the uncomfortable chair, or even her own body. There was only the music she had run from for so long, the music that had both saved and destroyed her. When she reached the first major, cadenza, a section of breathtaking difficulty, her fingers moved with such speed and precision that several professional pianists in the audience leaned forward in their seats, eyes wide with disbelief. One of them, an older man with white hair, actually stood up to get a better view of her hands. Director Okafor stood off to the side, his expression a mixture of shock and growing delight. He turned to Professor Williams, mouthing the words, "Who is she?" But no one had an answer. As May approached the final climax of the piece, tears streamed down her face, though she remained unaware of them. Her entire body was part of the performance now, swaying, bending, reaching for notes that seemed just beyond human capability. The final chords resonated through the room, hanging in the air for a breathless moment before fading to silence. For several seconds, no one moved. Then, as if a spell had been broken, the room erupted. People leapt to their feet, applauding wildly, some shouting "Bravo!" Others simply stood in stunned silence, still processing what they had witnessed. May opened her eyes, disoriented. The standing ovation continued for nearly 2 minutes while she sat motionless at the piano, unable to move, unable to believe what had just happened. Anton approached her, his face unreadable. He extended his hand once more. This time, May took it, allowing him to help her to her feet. The audience cheered even louder. "Who are you, really?" Anton whispered as they faced the crowd together. May turned to him, her eyes still bright with tears. "Exactly who I said I am." As they left the stage, Director Okafor intercepted them, his expression a mixture of amazement and professional interest. "Ms. Lin, that was extraordinary, truly extraordinary. I have so many questions." Behind him, a line of faculty members and donors had already formed. all eager to meet the mysterious pianist who had appeared from nowhere. May looked back at the stage, at the piano that had just reconnected her to the life she thought she had left behind forever. She wasn't sure if she felt liberated or trapped. Perhaps both. What she did know was that after tonight everything would change. The question was whether she was ready for it. The morning after the gala, May woke to her phone buzzing non-stop on her nightstand. She squinted at the screen. 23 missed calls, 47 text messages, and dozens of email notifications, most from numbers and addresses she didn't recognize. She groaned and pulled the blanket over her head. Last night felt like a strange dream, the kind that lingers in your mind long after waking, blurring the line between imagination and memory. But it wasn't a dream. She had played Rachmaninoff's third piano concerto in front of hundreds of people. She had revealed the self she'd spent 15 years burying. Someone knocked on her apartment door. 3 sharp raps that made her jump. May hesitated, then pulled on a robe over her pajamas and padded to the door. Through the peephole, she saw Director Okafor standing in the hallway, looking uncharacteristically casual in jeans and a sweater. May opened the door just enough to peek out. "Director Okafor." "Ms. Lin," he said with a warm smile. "I hope I'm not disturbing you too early. May I come in? I think we have a lot to discuss." May glanced back at her tiny one-bedroom apartment. It was neat but sparse, with second-hand furniture and bare walls. Nothing like the elegant homes the director probably visited. "It's not much," she said hesitantly. "I'm not here to judge your living arrangements," Director Okafor replied gently. "I'm here to talk about your music." May stepped back, allowing him to enter. She gestured toward a small kitchen table with 2 mismatched chairs. "Would you like some tea?" "That would be lovely." While May busied herself with the kettle, Director Okafor glanced around the apartment. His eyes lingered on the only decoration in the room, a faded photograph of a young girl at a piano, an older woman standing proudly behind her. "Is that you?" he asked. May looked over her shoulder and nodded. "And my mother. You were a child prodigy." It wasn't a question. May set 2 mugs of tea on the table and sat down across from him. "How did you find my address?" "HR department," Director Okafor admitted. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but after last night, well, I had to know more." He took a sip of tea. "You've worked at Eastman for 3 years, and in all that time no one knew we had a world-class pianist mopping our floors." May stared into her mug. "I'm not a world-class pianist. Not anymore. Last night suggests otherwise." Director Okafor leaned forward. "Your performance was extraordinary. I've been in music education for 30 years, Ms. Lin, and I've never heard Rachmaninoff played with such emotional depth. Such honesty." May remained silent, uncomfortable with the praise. "I did some research last night." Director Okafor continued. "Maylin isn't your birth name, is it?" She tensed. "No. You're Lily Zhao, the Lily Zhao." His voice held wonder and confusion in equal measure. "You won every major youth competition from age 7 to 18. You were accepted to Juilliard with a full scholarship. The music world had you pegged as the next great concert pianist." May, or Lily, looked up sharply. "Until I wasn't. Until the Beijing International Piano Competition 2009, Director Okafor said softly. "You were favored to win, then. You disappeared. No explanations, no statements to the press. You simply vanished from the classical music world. I had my reasons." "I'm sure you did," the director said, "and I'm not here to pry. But Lily—" "May I call you Lily?" "I prefer May now." "May then." "I'm not here just out of curiosity. I'm here to offer you a position." May blinked. "A position?" "As our new artist in residence at Eastman. Teaching, occasional performances, master classes, all on your terms." Director Okafor's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Your story, a renowned prodigy who disappeared only to be discovered years later working as a janitor, it's compelling. The publicity alone would bring attention to our outreach programs, our scholarships for underprivileged students. You want to use me as a publicity stunt?" May interrupted, her voice sharper than she intended. Director Okafor had the grace to look embarrassed. "That came out wrong. Yes, your story would generate interest, but I'm offering this because of your talent, not your background. What you did last night, it was magic, pure and simple." May stood up abruptly, carrying her mug to the sink. "I'm sorry you came all this way, Director, but I'm not interested." "May I ask why?" "Because I left that world for a reason." May turned to face him. The pressure, the expectations, the politics. It nearly destroyed me. I can't go back. Director Okafor studied her for a moment. What if it could be different this time? On your terms, as I said. Before May could respond, another knock sounded at the door. Harder this time, more insistent. She excused herself and looked through the peephole again. Her heart sank. Anton Hargrove. She opened the door halfway. How did you find me? Anton stood in the hallway, his usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled as if he'd dressed in a hurry. I might have bribed someone in HR, he admitted without a hint of remorse. We need to talk. I'm busy, May replied, trying to close the door. Anton put his foot in the doorway. It's important. Anton? Director Okafor appeared behind May. What are you doing here? Anton looked surprised to see his boss. Same as you, I imagine. Trying to understand how someone with this level of talent has been hiding in plain sight. He turned back to May. May I come in? Please? The please sounded foreign coming from him, as if he rarely used the word. Reluctantly, May stepped aside. Anton entered, immediately dominating the small space with his presence. He noticed the director's half-empty mug on the table. I see Richard beat me to it. I was just offering Ms. Lin, or rather Ms. Zhao, a position at Eastman, Director Okafor explained. Lily Zhao? Anton looked at May with new interest. The child prodigy from the 2000s. Former child prodigy, May corrected. Current janitor, and I'm not interested in changing that. Anton paced the small living room. Do you have any idea what happened after you left last night? The entire classical music community is buzzing. Someone recorded your performance on their phone. It's already gone viral. May's face paled. What? Anton pulled out his phone, opened a video, and handed it to her. The footage was shaky but clear enough. May at the piano, lost in Rachmaninoff, tears streaming down her face as her hands created magic from 88 keys. The view counter at the bottom read, 237,491. No, May whispered, handing the phone back as if it burned her fingers. No, this can't be happening. It's happening, Anton said, his voice gentler than she'd heard before. People are asking questions. Who is she? Where did she come from? Why is she working as a janitor? That's none of their business, May snapped. Perhaps not, Director Okafor interjected, but it is happening regardless. The question is, what do you want to do about it? May sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. I want it to go away. I want to go back to being invisible. That's no longer an option, Anton said bluntly. You've been seen, May, really seen. You can't put that genie back in the bottle. The three of them sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the sounds of the city continued. Car horns, distant sirens, the rhythm of normal life that May had carefully constructed for herself, now crumbling around her. Why did you stop? Anton finally asked. You had everything. Talent, recognition, a promising career ahead of you. What happened in Beijing? May looked up at him, then at Director Okafor. Their faces showed genuine curiosity, not judgment. Perhaps it was time to tell someone the truth. After 15 years of silence, the story felt like a weight she could no longer carry alone. I had a panic attack on stage, she said quietly. Middle of the Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto No. 1. In front of 2,000 people and a panel of the most respected judges in the world. Both men remained silent, waiting for her to continue. I'd been having them for months, the attacks. Small ones at first, manageable. My mother thought it was just nerves. My teacher said I needed more discipline. May's voice grew bitter. Neither of them understood what was happening to me. The pressure, Director Okafor suggested softly. May nodded. I'd been performing since I was 5 years old, practicing 6, sometimes 8 hours a day. My entire identity was wrapped up in being the prodigy, the next great hope. I never had a childhood, never had friends, never had choices. So Beijing was the breaking point, May confirmed. I walked on stage, sat down at the piano, and suddenly couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hit the keys. The room started spinning and I thought I was dying. She paused, lost in the memory. I ran off stage in the middle of the first movement. The audience was shocked. The judges were furious. My mother was devastated. And you never performed again, Anton concluded. I couldn't. May's voice cracked slightly. Every time I even thought about playing in public, the panic would start again. So I disappeared, changed my name, started over. But you kept playing, Anton pointed out, in empty practice rooms, when you thought no one was listening. Because I love the music, May said simply. I just couldn't handle everything that came with it. Director Okafor leaned forward. What if things could be different now? You're an adult making your own choices. No pushy parents, no demanding teachers. Just pushy colleagues and demanding audiences, May replied with a pointed look at Anton, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Fair enough, Anton acknowledged. Last night was not my finest moment. I put you on the spot and that was wrong. But I don't regret it because what you did was remarkable. It reminded me why music matters. May looked at him with surprise. It was perhaps the most genuine thing she'd heard him say. I have a proposition, Anton continued. Not a public performance. Just one person in the audience, me. Why would I play for you? May asked skeptically. Because I want to understand. Anton's usual arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. Last night you played Rachmaninoff better than anyone I've ever heard. Not just technically. Anyone with enough practice can get the notes right. But you made me feel something I haven't felt in years. And what's that? Wonder, Anton said simply. You reminded me that music isn't just about perfection. It's about humanity. Director Okafor glanced between them with interest. I think that's an excellent idea. No pressure, no audience. Just two musicians sharing their art. May considered the proposition. Part of her wanted to throw them both out, to cling to the safety of anonymity she'd built for herself. But another part, a part she'd tried to silence for 15 years, was awakening, hungry for connection, for expression, for the pure joy of sharing music with someone who truly understood. One condition, she finally said. Name it, Anton replied. You play for me too, something real. Not the technical showpieces you're known for, but something that matters to you. Anton hesitated, then nodded. Deal. Director Okafor clapped his hands together. Wonderful. You can use my private studio. No interruptions, no pressure. As they worked out the details, May felt a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration. She was opening a door she'd kept firmly shut for 15 years, with no idea what waited on the other side. But for the first time in a very long time, she was curious to find out. Director Okafor's private studio was nothing like the practice rooms May had been cleaning for the past 3 years. Located on the top floor of the conservatory's east wing, it was a sanctuary of warm wood and natural light. One wall was entirely glass, offering a view of the city skyline. A Bosendorfer grand piano, even more impressive than the Steinway from the gala, occupied the center of the room, its polished surface gleaming in the afternoon sun. May arrived first, led in by the director himself, who then discreetly disappeared, promising that no one would disturb them. She walked around the piano, running her fingers lightly over its surface but not yet touching the keys. After the emotional upheaval of the past few days, she felt strangely calm, as if moving through a dream. The video of her performance had now been viewed over 500,000 times. Her phone had been ringing constantly until she finally turned it off. 3 music magazines had somehow gotten her email address and sent interview requests. A piano manufacturer had offered her an endorsement deal. The classical music world, it seemed, loved nothing more than a good comeback story, even if the person at the center of it had never intended to come back. The door opened, and Anton entered carrying his violin case. He seemed different today, less the arrogant virtuoso, more a curious musician. He wore casual clothes, jeans, and a simple button-down shirt, rather than his usual tailored suits. You came, he said, sounding almost surprised. I said I would. May gestured to the violin case. What will you play? Anton set the case on a nearby table and opened it carefully. I haven't decided yet. That wasn't our deal, May reminded him. Something real, you said. Something that matters to you. Anton removed his violin, a beautiful instrument with a rich amber glow. Guarneri del Gesù, 1742, he said, noticing her interest. On loan from a private collector. It's beautiful, May acknowledged. But you're avoiding my question. Anton tested the strings, making small adjustments to the tuning. What do you want to hear? I want to hear you, May replied simply. Not the virtuoso who plays to impress critics. The musician underneath all that. Anton looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Fair enough. He positioned the violin under his chin, closed his eyes briefly, and began to play. The music that filled the room wasn't what May expected. Instead of one of the technically brilliant showpieces he was known for, Anton played a slow, haunting melody, Bach's Air on the G-string, one of the most famous pieces in the classical repertoire, but often overlooked by soloists seeking to display their technical prowess. In Anton's hands, the simple melody became something profound, each note hung in the air, perfectly formed yet vulnerable. The piece required no flashy techniques, no lightning-fast passages, just pure tone and emotional truth. May sat on a nearby chair, closing her eyes to listen more deeply. This was a different Anton than the one who had challenged her at the gala. This Anton played with the sensitivity she hadn't known he possessed. When the final note faded, neither of them spoke for several moments. The silence felt charged, significant. That was... May searched for the right words. "Honest!" Anton lowered his violin. "My father used to play that for my mother. It was her favorite piece. Used to? He died when I was 12. Anton placed his violin carefully on the table. Cancer. He was a violinist with the Philadelphia Orchestra. Not a soloist, not famous, just a section player. But when he played, you couldn't take your eyes off him. He had this presence. Is that why you became a violinist?" May asked. Anton nodded. "I wanted to be just like him. Then I wanted to be better than him." He gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. "Somewhere along the way, I think I forgot what made him special in the first place, which was, he played for the love of it, always. Even when he was sick, even when the treatments made his fingers numb. He'd sit in our living room and play that Bach piece, and for a few minutes, everything would be okay." May felt something shift between them, a new understanding, a bridge where before there had been only distance. "Your turn," Anton said, gesturing toward the piano. May approached the instrument with both eagerness and trepidation. She sat on the bench, adjusting it to the right height, placing her hands on the keys without pressing them. "What will you play?" Anton asked, echoing her earlier question. May thought for a moment. "Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat major, Opera 9, No. 2. One of Chopin's most beloved pieces, it was often assigned to intermediate students. Not technically challenging like the Rachmaninoff, but emotionally complex, sweet and melancholy in equal measure." She began to play, letting the familiar melody wash over her. Unlike her performance at the gala, this wasn't about proving anything or overcoming the past. This was about the present moment, about sharing something genuine with another musician who might understand. As she played, May realized how much she had missed this, not the applause or recognition, but the simple act of making music for someone else. For 15 years she had played only for herself in empty rooms when no one was listening. There was a different kind of vulnerability in being heard, in allowing another person to witness your interpretation of the notes on the page. When she finished, Anton was leaning against the piano, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Why did you really challenge me to play at the gala?" May asked. The truth this time. Anton considered the question. "I was curious at first. It seemed impossible that someone with your talent would be working as a janitor. I thought perhaps you were hiding something. Maybe you weren't as good as that first night suggested. And then you played Rachmaninoff better than anyone I've ever heard, including myself." Anton's admission seemed to cost him something. It made me question everything I thought I knew about music, about talent, about why we do what we do. "And what answers did you find?" "I'm still looking," Anton admitted. "But I know this, you can't walk away again." "Not now." May felt a flash of irritation. "That's not your decision to make." "No, it's not," Anton agreed. "But it would be a tragedy. For music, for the students who could learn from you, for yourself." "You don't know what's best for me," May said, standing up from the piano bench. "You have no idea what it was like. The pressure, the expectations, the constant fear of failure." "You're right, I don't," Anton acknowledged. "My path was different. But I do know what it's like to lose yourself in the pursuit of perfection, to forget why you started playing in the first place." May turned away, walking to the window. The city spread out below them, people going about their lives, unaware of the drama unfolding in this quiet room high above them. "I can't go back to that life," she said softly. "The competitions, the critics, the endless striving to be better than everyone else. It nearly destroyed me once. I won't let it happen again." "It doesn't have to be like that," Anton said, joining her at the window. There are other paths. Like what? Teaching, for one. Sharing your gift with students who need guidance. Not just technical instruction, but emotional understanding. Or chamber music, playing with others, not as a soloist with all the pressure on your shoulders. Or even just recording, making music on your own terms without the stress of live performance. May considered his words. Why do you care what I do? A week ago you didn't even know I existed. Anton was quiet for a moment. Because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That music isn't just about technical perfection or critical acclaim. It's about connection, humanity, the thing that makes us more than just skilled machines. Before May could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Director Okafor poked his head in, looking apologetic. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something you both should see. He entered the room, tablet in hand, and set it on the piano. On the screen was an article from the Classical Music Review, one of the most respected publications in the industry. The headline read, The Return of Lily Zhao, the piano prodigy who disappeared. Beneath it was the video of May's performance, alongside a photograph of her as a teenager, accepting a trophy at a competition in Vienna. They've identified you, Director Okafor said gently. The story is everywhere now. I've already had calls from the New York Times, the BBC, and 3 major record labels. May felt the room spin slightly. The very thing she had feared was happening. Her carefully constructed anonymity was shattering around her. What do they want? She asked, her voice barely audible. Interviews, mostly. Your story in your words. And offers. Teaching positions, recording contracts, concert appearances. I can't, May said, backing away from the tablet as if it might bite her. I can't do this again. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, Director Okafor assured her. But you should know that people are inspired by your story. The comments on that video, thousands of them, are overwhelmingly positive. People are moved by your playing, yes, but also by your journey. My journey, May laughed bitterly. My breakdown, you mean? My failure. Your humanity, Anton corrected. Your courage in walking away from something that was hurting you. And your courage in sitting down at that piano again after 15 years. May looked at him, surprised by his perception. I'm not saying you need to give interviews or sign contracts, Anton continued. But you can't pretend this didn't happen. You can't go back to being invisible. Director Okafor nodded in agreement. The question is, what do you want to do now? On your terms, as I said before. May looked between the 2 men, then back at the tablet with her younger self staring back at her. The girl in that photograph had been driven by others' expectations, her mother's ambition, her teacher's demands, the classical music world's hunger for prodigies to celebrate and then devour. But the woman she was now had choices, real choices for perhaps the first time in her life. I need time, she finally said. Time to think, to decide what music means to me now. Not when I was a child, not when I was breaking down, but now. Of course, Director Okafor said. Take all the time you need. Your job will be waiting for you, whatever you decide. Anton was watching her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. What? She asked. I have an idea, he said. Something that might help you figure things out. I'm listening. Play with me, Anton suggested. Not for an audience, not for critics or record labels. Just music for the sake of music. A duet. Why? May asked, genuinely curious. Because sometimes we discover who we are through collaboration, not isolation. Anton picked up his violin again. No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 musicians making something together. May looked at the Bösendorfer, then back at Anton. The idea was both terrifying and strangely appealing. To play with someone else after so many years of playing alone. To create music as a conversation rather than a monologue. What piece did you have in mind? She asked. A smile spread across Anton's face, not the smug, self-satisfied smile she had seen at the gala, but something more genuine. I have a few ideas. Director Okafor, sensing the shift in the room, quietly excused himself, leaving the 2 musicians alone once more. As the door closed behind him, May felt something she hadn't experienced in a very long time. The simple, uncomplicated joy of anticipation. Not fear, not dread, but curiosity about what might come next. Perhaps there was a way forward after all. Not back to the life she had fled, but toward something new. Something on her own terms. She sat down at the piano again and looked up at Anton. "Show me what you have in mind." 6 months passed like the turning of pages in a well-loved book. Not rushed, but with a sense of purpose, of movement towards something meaningful. May stood backstage at Carnegie Hall, peering through a gap in the curtains at the audience filing into the historic venue. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm. The panic that had once consumed her before performances had faded to a manageable flutter of nerves, the kind that sharpened focus rather than shattered it. Nervous? Anton appeared beside her, violin case in hand. "A little," May admitted. "You?" Anton smiled, always. Anyone who says they don't get nervous before playing Carnegie Hall is either lying or dead inside. May laughed, surprised by how easy it had become to laugh around him. The arrogant virtuoso who had challenged her at the gala 6 months ago had gradually revealed himself to be more complex than she'd initially thought. Still confident to the point of occasional arrogance. Still intensely competitive but also thoughtful, perceptive, and unexpectedly kind when it mattered most. Their path to this moment had been winding and unexpected. What began as a single duet in Director Okafor's private studio had evolved into regular rehearsals, then private performances for small groups of students, then a tentative agreement to perform together for a charity benefit. Tonight was different, though. Tonight was Carnegie Hall, the dream venue of every classical musician, the stage where legends were born and legacies cemented. The concert had sold out within hours of being announced, fueled by the viral video of May's performance and the subsequent discovery of her identity. The publicity had been intense at first, reporters camping outside her apartment, music magazines offering substantial sums for exclusive interviews, social media buzzing with theories about her disappearance and reemergence. May had declined most interview requests, but had agreed to one thoughtful conversation with a respected journalist from Classical Piano Quarterly, where she spoke honestly about her breakdown, her years of anonymity, and her cautious return to music. 5 minutes, a stagehand called out, passing by with a clipboard. May nodded, stepping back from the curtain. She smoothed the front of her simple black dress, elegant but comfortable, chosen for ease of movement rather than fashion. No more uncomfortable gowns that restricted her breathing. No more painful high heels that made her feet ache through long performances. That was one of many boundaries she had set for herself in this new chapter. "Remember what we agreed," Anton said, giving her a knowing look. "Tonight isn't about impressing critics or living up to anyone's expectations. It's just about the music." "Just about the music," May repeated, the phrase having become something of a mantra between them. The program they had chosen reflected this philosophy. Rather than the technical showpieces that dominated many concert programs, they had selected works that spoke to them personally, pieces that told a story, that conveyed genuine emotion. 2 minutes, the stagehand called. Anton opened his violin case, removing the Guarneri with practiced care. "Ready to make some history?" "Ready to make some music," May corrected gently. "History can take care of itself." The stage lights dimmed and the audience fell silent in anticipation. A disembodied voice announced them. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Anton Hargrove and May Lin in their Carnegie Hall debut as a duo." The applause was thunderous as they walked onto the stage together. May felt a moment of déjà vu, remembering the charity gala where she had reluctantly approached the piano in her maintenance uniform. Now she walked with purpose, with ownership of her presence on the stage. They had decided to begin with Beethoven's Spring Sonata, a piece that balanced the piano and violin as equal partners in musical conversation. As May sat at the Steinway and Anton positioned himself beside her, they exchanged a glance that contained months of shared work, shared struggles, and shared triumphs. May played the opening phrase, followed by Anton's response on the violin. Back and forth they went, like old friends finishing each other's sentences, anticipating each other's thoughts. The music flowed between them with an organic quality that couldn't be rehearsed or manufactured. It could only be discovered through trust and genuine connection. They moved through the program, from Beethoven to Brahms to a contemporary piece written specifically for them by a young composer from the conservatory. May felt something she had never experienced in her prodigy years. True joy in performance. Not the fleeting satisfaction of technical perfection, but the deep contentment of authentic expression shared with others. The final piece on the program was the one they had worked on the longest, Frank's Sonata in A Major, a masterpiece that demanded not just technical skill, but emotional synchronicity between the performers. The piece had become special to them during their months of collaboration, each movement mapping to a stage in their evolving partnership. By the time they reached the fourth movement, with its canonical echoes between piano and violin, the audience was completely silent, collectively holding their breath as the music built toward its climax. The final chords resonated through the hall, hanging in the air for a suspended moment before the audience erupted in applause. Standing ovations were common at Carnegie Hall, but there was something different about this one, an intensity, an emotional response that went beyond appreciation of technical skill. People were wiping away tears, calling out "Bravo!" with genuine enthusiasm. As May and Anton took their bows, she caught sight of Director Okafor in the front row, beaming with pride. Beside him sat May's mother, who had flown in from China for the performance, their relationship still healing, still tentative but moving in the right direction. After multiple curtain calls, they returned backstage both exhilarated and exhausted in the way that only a successful performance could leave you. That was... Anton seemed at a loss for words. Unusual for him. Yes, it was, May agreed. Understanding what he couldn't articulate, there were moments in music that transcended language. That could only be felt. They had arranged to meet select visitors backstage after the performance. No large reception, no press conference, just a small gathering of people who mattered to them. As they prepared to greet their guests, Anton touched May's arm lightly. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you," he said, suddenly looking uncharacteristically nervous. "What is it?" "The foundation we've been discussing, the one for musicians dealing with performance anxiety and mental health issues. I think we should make it official. Register as a nonprofit, set up programs, bring in therapists who specialize in working with performers." May nodded. The idea had been percolating between them for months, born from their own experiences and the surprising number of messages she had received from musicians struggling with similar issues. "I agree," she said. "It's needed badly." "Good." Anton looked relieved. "Because I've already started the paperwork, and I've booked us a meeting with potential donors next week. And I may have hired an executive director, a brilliant woman who used to work for the Arts Council before she burned out and left the industry." May laughed. "You never do anything halfway, do you?" "Not when it matters," Anton replied seriously. "And this matters, May. What happened to you, what happens to so many musicians, it shouldn't be a career-ending crisis. It should be something people can talk about, get help for, and move through." May was touched by his passion for the project. "What would we call it?" "I was thinking the Comeback Foundation," Anton suggested. "Simple, direct, hopeful." "I like it," May said. "But I'm not sure comeback is the right word for what happened to me. I didn't come back to my old life. I found a new way forward." Anton considered this. "The New Way Foundation?" "We'll work on the name," May said with a smile. Their guests began to arrive. Director Okafor, May's mother, Anton's sister who had flown in from Europe, a few close colleagues from the conservatory. As they chatted, accepting congratulations and discussing the performance, May found herself observing Anton from across the room. He was different now from the man who had discovered her playing in an empty practice room. Still brilliant, still intense, but somehow more grounded, more connected to the human aspects of music rather than just the technical perfection of it. And she was different too. The frightened young woman who had fled the stage in Beijing. The solitary janitor who played only when no one was listening. Those versions of herself were still part of her story, but they no longer defined her completely. Later that night, after the guests had gone and they were sharing a quiet late dinner at a small restaurant near Carnegie Hall, Anton raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said. May clinked her glass against his. "To new paths." "You know," Anton said, setting down his glass, "I've been thinking about that night at the gala. When I challenged you to play, what about it? I was trying to prove something, to show off my discovery, to demonstrate my own importance in finding you. It was arrogant and inconsiderate." "It was," May agreed, but without anger. That night felt distant now, like a scene from someone else's life. "But if I hadn't done it..." Anton left the thought unfinished. "I might still be mopping floors and playing only when the building was empty," May acknowledged. Sometimes the wrong action can lead to the right outcome. Does that mean I'm forgiven? May considered him with a slight smile. Let's say we're even. Your arrogance pushed me back into a world I had fled. But in doing so, it helped me find a new relationship with music, one that's healthier, more sustainable, more joyful. And that's what matters in the end, isn't it? Anton said. Not the accolades or the famous venues or the reviews. Just the music May finished for him. Outside the restaurant window, New York City continued its endless symphony of light and sound, taxi horns, distant sirens, snippets of conversation from passers-by.